The move by President Yoon seemed to take all his international allies completely by surprise. The leaders of the United States, Japan, and others were perplexed at his decision to declare martial law. David Garrett reports.
The day after the tumultuous night before, tourists at the Gyeongbokgung Palace unsure what to make of 6 hours of martial law and protests on their holidays.
So, nothing too dramatic, I don't believe. I don't believe it, and again, I'm not Korean.
Our guide is also giving us security that nothing really big happen. It might be a riot sometime later in the afternoon, but it might be.
US President Joe Biden wrapped up a speech in Angola, but didn't really know what to say about South Korea.
Mr. President, anything on South Korea, martial law?
Just getting briefed. Just getting briefed.
Later, the State Department had little to add.
We were not notified of President Yoon's announcement in advance. But beyond that, I think the important thing to remember, Sean, is that ultimately at the crux of this is not, President Biden, President Yoon, these two specific governments. What this is about is the broader strategic relationship and the broader strategic partnership that we have with the Republic of Korea. And that alliance, as I said, is ironclad.
It's interesting that in all of this, the United States has been remarkably silent. If in fact it were the case that there was a direct threat to South Korea from the north, then I think you would have seen a very different reaction from Washington. But sensibly, Washington, I think, has felt the need to remain relatively muted in terms of their public response to see what would happen in terms of the domestic political situation.
Of course, South Korea is an important American ally in Asia with more than 30,000 US troops permanently stationed in South Korea. So what happens in South Korea, its governance affects not only the region, but also the wider world.
Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba was also giving little away. He said, "It's not my place to comment on other countries, but we've been watching developments and ensuring the safety of Japanese nationals." David Garrett, TVB News.
Flights between Hong Kong and South Korea remain normal today. The government has urged Hong Kongers in South Korea to stay vigilant. The Hong Kong Federation of Insurers said travelers would not be compensated for extra costs incurred by delays because of government orders. Samantha Lee tells us more.
At Hong Kong International Airport's departure hall this morning, many people went ahead with their planned trips to South Korea. Flights to South Korea were normal. Although martial law was lifted, some people were still worried that their trips might be disrupted. This woman said if there were more political changes in the coming few days, she would avoid getting close to Yeouido, where the South Korean National Assembly is located. This man, Mr. Wong, said he would consider returning to Hong Kong if the situation in South Korea became more serious. Meanwhile, a Korean who just arrived in Hong Kong said he believes South Korea is still a safe place.
We Korean people made a democracy, so we believe this kind of situation cannot be real and cannot be stay longer. So we are happy to see that the situation over.
Selina Lau, chief executive of the Hong Kong Federation of Insurers, said martial law is government decree, and insurance does not cover extra costs incurred by such government orders. However, other costs arising from sickness, accidents, and financial losses that are not related to martial law or the political situation there will be covered by insurance as usual. The SAR government has also urged Hong Kongers visiting South Korea to avoid large gatherings of people and pay attention to local announcements about the latest situation. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The government has proposed a time-varying toll plan for the Tai Lam tunnel when the administration takes it over next year. Private cars will be charged $45 per trip during peak hours. Celine Chan reports.
The Executive Council earlier approved a new tolling plan for the Tai Lam tunnel, which is set to be taken over by the government in May next year. According to the plan, all types of vehicles will see a 22 to 80% drop in toll charges. There will be 3 levels of charges for private cars. Drivers will pay $45 instead of the current $58 during the morning rush hour and evening peak period. The charge for private vehicles will be $30 for normal periods from Monday to Saturday and $18 for non-peak hours on Sundays and public holidays. Commercial vehicles will be charged a fixed toll of $43 and taxis will be paying $28 throughout the day. Officials expect peak hour traffic congestion on Tumen Road and Tolo Highway will be eased after the introduction of the new toll system. For instance, Tumen Road is expected to see 300 private cars less during the peak hours, while the remaining capacity of the Tai Lam tunnel could also be better utilized to make traveling more convenient for residents living in the Northwestern New Territories. Lawmaker Ben Chen believes there's still room for further lowering the tunnel tolls. He said based on his personal experience, 7:15 a.m. should not be considered as the rush hour, and pushing the beginning of the rush hour period to a later time can help residents. Officials said the government aims to table the bill on the new tolling system to the Legislative Council next Wednesday and hopes to see the bill passed in the first quarter of 2025. Celine Chan, TVB News.
Welcome back. Clashes continued in the Georgian capital early Wednesday as police used tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters. Georgia's public ombudsman accused the police of inflicting torture on people arrested during anti-government protests. Demonstrators are against the government's decision to suspend talks on the country joining the European Union. Tracy Furness has more.
Clashes between police and protesters continued on the streets of Tbilisi for the 6th consecutive night Tuesday, continuing into early hours of Wednesday morning. Protesters shooting fireworks towards riot police, while police respond with tear gas and water cannons. Here, a young woman confronts riot police trying to break the riot police cordon. No information was issued whether or not the protester was arrested. Georgia's Interior Ministry said 293 protesters were detained on administrative charges and 5 arrested on criminal charges. Georgia's Prime Minister, Irakli Kobahitsi, denied his government was turning away from joining the European Union. We regret if anyone misunderstood our message. European integration continues and there will be no delays on the path to EU integration. I want to remind European bureaucrats and politicians, including those who are artificially hindering our country's European integration, to bring negotiations to the table, and we will sign immediately, he said. Meanwhile, the Georgian Legion, which is fighting the Russian army in Ukraine, has denied claims that it is planning to return to Georgia to take part in anti-government protests.
We would go to Georgia and protest with all the other protesters, but unfortunately, Georgian government will extradite us to Russia. So that's why, that's one of the reasons why we're in Ukraine. And the main reason is that Ukraine needs help and we have no right to leave Ukraine now and just to, give up everything and go to protest. Georgian society, Georgian people, Georgian youth are strong enough to resist what is going on now.
Unrest erupted after the ruling Georgian Dream Party retained control of parliament in the disputed October 26 parliamentary election, widely seen as a referendum on Georgia's EU aspirations. The opposition and the pro-Western president accused the governing party of rigging the vote with Russia's help and boycotted parliament sessions. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Today is Constitution Day. In a seminar co-organized by the SAR government and the central government's liaison office, Chief Executive John Lee said the Constitution is the country's supreme law that safeguards one country, two systems. He also underscored the importance of educating the public about the Constitution. Chief Executive John Lee said all walks of life in Hong Kong should adhere to the principle of one country and make good use of the benefits of two systems and give full play to Hong Kong's unique advantages. Zhang Yangqiang, director of the central government's liaison office, said despite ongoing geopolitical turmoil and many unfavorable factors, the city will be able to achieve further development by upholding the Constitution. Earlier today, a flag-raising ceremony was held at the Hong Kong Customs College to mark Constitution Day. The Disciplined Services Ceremonial Guard and the Flag Party took part in the ceremony at the Hong Kong Customs College in Tai Lam this morning. Addressing the attendees, Secretary for Security Tai Lam said the Constitution provides the most fundamental and solid legal protection for one country, two systems. He also said Hong Kong should make full use of the unique advantages of one country, two systems and safeguard national sovereignty, security, and development interests to maintain the SAR's long-term stability and prosperity. He added that public awareness of the Constitution should be nurtured from an early age. Secretary for Security Chris Tang and the heads of the disciplined services also attended the ceremony today. A team of Chinese university medical researchers has invented a non-invasive technology for people with unexplored bowel symptoms. Celine Chan tells us more.
好長時間係腸胃炎嘅。
Eric Lam is a patient diagnosed with the Crohn's disease, a type of inflammatory bowel disease. The disease often shares similar symptoms with common functional gut problems, and doctors may not be able to diagnose the disease accurately during the early stages. But delayed treatment could lead to chronic inflammation, and severe cases may even require the removal of a damaged intestine. Endoscopy examinations and imaging tests like CT tests and MRI scans are required for IBD diagnosis. These tests take up to 6 to 12 months for a diagnosis and could even cost patients as much as $60,000. The team made use of about 6,000 fecal samples from different regions and ethnicities and identified about 20 types of bacteria associated with IBD. They further transformed their findings to clinical setting and invented the world's first non-invasive IBD diagnostic tool with the use of multiplex droplet digital PCR technology.
With this test, we were able to tell the difference between inflammatory bowel disease from irritable bowel syndrome without going through a colonoscopy. With this new technology, we aim to, number one, make an early diagnosis of inflammatory bowel disease without waiting till the patient develops complications. And two, we're able to reduce the long waiting time for colonoscopy. Because a lot of patients who don't have IBD, they really don't require this invasive and unpleasant colonoscopy. And three, for patients who are established to have IBD, we can make use of this test to monitor the disease progress without subjecting the patient to colonoscopy every now and then.
The innovation won a silver medal in the Geneva International Exhibition of Inventions 2024. The non-invasive diagnostic test is expected to be ready for clinical use in Hong Kong in 2027. Celine Chan, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.